So the ballot question a year ago in the election campaign was, how are we going to keep this going? How are we going to sustain the economic momentum? And more to the point, I've had a number of people come up to me since the election campaign as we outline all these statistics, and people who in Saskatchewan understand that things are going very well, to offer some advice on what our government should do next. And there's a bit of a sort of a common current that runs through this advice. It goes something like this: Brad, don't screw it up. So we've worked very hard on a growth plan for Saskatchewan, our plan to not screw things up, to continue the economic momentum we see, and we've begun implementing it. And let me share some of the highlights of that plan with you today. First and foremost, we wanted to depoliticize economic development in the province. For too long, under parties of different stripe, mind you, it's not a partisan statement, we have relied on an economic plan that picked winners and losers, that used taxpayers as involuntary venture capitalists. And the net result has been projects that have failed, whether they're potato businesses or dot-coms or movie businesses, and the economy has underperformed to its potential. We want to take the politics out of economic development. We have replaced the line department approach with a new partnership, not unlike the Irish example. It's called Enterprise Saskatchewan, and it is constituted of all the stakeholders in our economy, and its job is to publicly hold our government accountable for how competitive our economy is and what the government is doing to ensure its competitiveness. The second element of our growth plan is fiscal probity. We have inherited a bit of a debt. There's been a debt in the province. The previous government had made some modest progress on the issue. We passed as one of our first pieces of legislation something called the Growth and Financial Security Act, which prescribed that our government would, with unbudgeted surpluses, apply by law half of those surpluses to debt, the other half to infrastructure. Because of that decision, and a decision to actually exceed that requirement on the debt, I can report to you today with pride, as we have to the people of the province, that in our first year of government, we will have cut the debt of the province of Saskatchewan by a third. And you can expect to see more progress in this regard before the year is out. Fiscal probity is absolutely foundational to our growth plan. So is lower taxes for our economy. And we are going to continue to put downward pressure on taxes and on those barriers to growth. Sometimes our efforts with respect to taxes will mean not decreases, but simply the status quo. It was about a month after our government was sworn in, we went to Calgary to give a speech at the Petroleum Club there, where I announced that Saskatchewan would not be increasing its oil royalties. It is the first and probably the only time I've ever received an ovation for our government announcing we were going to do precisely nothing at all. Infrastructure investment is key. We have heard from our friends in Alberta. We've tried to learn from their successes and their challenges that you have to balance debt reduction with investment in infrastructure to avoid some of the challenges of growth. That's very much a part of our plan. We have revamped our labor legislation under the direction and the guidance of the minister that's joined us here today, the Honourable Rob Norris, to rebalance our labor legislation that it would be fair to both sides, but that it would not be a disincentive to employers to operate in the province, to create jobs, and that it would be competitive simply with other jurisdictions in Canada. Part of our growth plan is to make sure we tell our story. That's why I'm here today. We're attending a job fair in Toronto, Canada's biggest job fair. 50 companies from Saskatchewan have joined me today, joined us as ministers. We're going to get our message out. That telling of our story has meant we've been in Washington and in New York. We have a story to tell our American friends. They're unaware, for example, that 6% of their electricity comes from uranium in our province, that we sell them more oil than the nation of Kuwait. This is a positive message on a continent that I think is looking for some constructive trade dialogue. We can contribute to it, and we intend to. We intend to also get our message out around the country. We have to do a little bit of rebranding still in our province so that this new reality, this new brand is well known. I remember it was not very long ago I was driving our youngest daughter to a birthday party, and it got me thinking about branding that day. She said, Dad, I've got something to tell you. And that's always important. So I turned down the radio and I said, what's that, Faith? She said, Dad, I just want you to know I've been thinking, and I've decided that my favorite Coke is Pepsi. Kind of gets you thinking about branding, doesn't it? Coke would be pretty happy. They got the whole segment. Pepsi would be thrilled. They got her vote in that segment, in that branding segment. We have to have a brand in our province that we are welcoming of, obviously, of investment and of business, but we also have a quality of life that's a priority in our province as well. And penultimately, we are also seeking new partnerships within Western Canada and with other provinces so that we can cooperate on a bilateral basis with Alberta and other jurisdictions to further reduce interprovincial trade barriers and make Saskatchewan a great place to do business. Finally, the most important element of our growth plan is our innovation agenda for our economy. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this if I can. I think people in this room will know that we are a resource powerhouse in our province, have always been a resource powerhouse. Roughly a third of the potash supply of the world is in our province. 26% or so of uranium production last year came from Saskatchewan. We're the second largest producer of oil in the Dominion of Canada, and the third largest producer of natural gas. We have a third of the country's ag biotech community at the University of Saskatchewan. And in terms of agriculture, and we don't talk about this enough, and we ought to, especially today when the world sees more and more of a growing middle class that is hungrier and using more intense agricultural practices to grow the food and also to be able to purchase the food that they need. Consider the following. Saskatchewan includes half of the arable acres in the country. 45% of our nation's canola production comes from our province. 32% of the world's lentil exports are from Saskatchewan. A quarter of the world's flaxseed is from Saskatchewan. A quarter of the world's mustard production is from Saskatchewan. 38% of the world's dried pea export is from the province of Saskatchewan. Very, very significant as you think about the future, the middle term and the far term, and the position that puts our province in. So we know we've had the resources. That's our right hook in terms of our economic 1-2 punch. What we need to do is work on our jab, if I can use that clumsy sports metaphor. And for us, the jab is the innovation economy. You know, in Western Canada and significantly in the province of Saskatchewan, we did miss out for the most part on that manufacturing sector. And now we see that sector under some considerable stress right across the Western economies of the world. We have the opportunity in the province to build on some momentum already in the innovation economy, to make that our 1-2 punch, to make that our legacy, to smooth out the bumps of a commodity-based economy, a resource-based economy. Consider with me the advantage that we already have. We do have Canada's only synchrotron at the University of Saskatchewan. You will see our government doing more with industry and with the university itself to take fuller advantage, better advantage of that huge and important asset to our province. We do have a third of Canada's ag biotech community, as I've already mentioned. We lead the world in CO2, carbon capture and storage, and we're using it to enhance oil recovery. When that project you might have heard about is done in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, together with Encana and Apache Oil, we'll have sequestered 30 million tons of CO2, not shifting it around, not putting a price on it, putting it in the ground, where in the third phase of that research project, it's demonstrated to be stable and right where we want it to stay. So we're going to continue to invest in that through the Petroleum Research Center at the U of R. I can tell you we're going to carve out a leadership position on clean coal. We've signaled our government's preparedness to invest about $1.4 billion in a project in southeast Saskatchewan on clean coal. We're going to coordinate with Alberta because they're looking at a few projects as well. We know there's a risk here, but the importance of the work cannot be overstated.